Alright, so here I am setting up the picture space by basically looking at my photo and just trying to get comfortable with what size I want to draw her. The bigger a drawing is, the longer it's going to take. The smaller, the less time it's going to take. And so I just basically stare at the picture and just kind of put my hands on the paper and kind of get a feel for where I want to go with things. Then I start marking off the top and bottom, highest and lowest point, top of her head or her chin in this case. And the center of that space usually represents the eyes or something around about that area. And then I'll go to the top half and start cutting up that piece. And so basically when you draw, it becomes a cutting up method where you're trying to just figure out all the landmarks. And the usual ones that I go for are the hairline, the eyebrow line, which is the top of the eyebrows, the pupil line, which I also call the eye line, the nose line, which is the lowest point of the nose, usually in the bottom center, and then the mouth line, which I usually use the center of where the two lips meet, and that's what I call the mouth line. And of course the very top of the head would be the top of the head, and the chin line would be the bottom of the chin. And once I get those landmarks that you just saw me do, I'll measure on my photo the width across her eyes from flesh to flesh. So the flesh just adjacent to the right eye and the left eye, right by where your sideburns are. And I compare that to the height. And usually the width of your face is equivalent to about your chin to eyebrow. So they're both same measurement. So if you measure from your eyebrow to your chin, that's going to be roughly the same as flesh to flesh across your eyes, all the way out from the outside of your left eye to the outside of your right eye, by where the flesh is there. Not the actual eye, just where the flesh is out by where the temples begin. And so by putting that in, or by figuring out that, I go to my eyebrow line to chin line, measure that, turn it sideways, and whammo, I got me a very accurate depiction for the width of the face. Once I get that in, I start determining how wide the eyes are going to be. And I get that by measuring from the corner of one eye to the corner of the other eye and seeing what that is similar to. And sometimes that can be same as, say, the mouth line to your eye line or eyebrow line to nose line, something like that on the vertical. When you turn it sideways is the same as the very corner of your eye to the other corner of your other eye. So you're just trying to look for similarities in sizes. And then by finding those, you then go find those same locations on your drawing and you put them in. Once I get those eyes in there, as far as the width of them, I start getting the nose, because the nose always builds off the eye. And so I'm making my way down, starting with the eyes, making my way down to the nose, and then I go finally to the mouth. And the mouth is roughly from pupil to pupil, but that can vary wildly, so you always want to check. So it's usually going to be a little wider than the nose and right around as wide as the pupil to pupil width, or something smaller than that. So I'll put little borders so I got an idea where the corner of the mouth is on either side. And then using plumb lines, you can't really see the photo off the screen there, but I'm holding the pencil vertically, and I'm using that vertical pencil on my photo to see where the neck comes out of. And it comes out of, either the same edge as the right nostril or the corner of the right corner of the mouth, or wherever. And then I do the same thing with the left edge of the neck and try to figure out where that goes. It's important to get the right size, because you don't want it to look like she's a football player when she isn't, because they got this huge wide neck or this very skinny abnormal neck. So all you need to do is basically use plumb lines. Here you can see me determining how many eye heights it takes to get down to the nose, okay, to the bottom of the nose. So on the photograph, I said, it was like 3.5, I believe, was the number. So if you were to go for the inside of your eye, measure from top to bottom, eyelash to eyelash roughly, it takes, in her case, about 3.5, which is kind of abnormal. She has very large eyes compared to most people, where they usually fall in the range of 5 eye heights down to the nose. So that would be the interior eye, and then that same size down again 4 more times for a total of 5. That's usually what most people fall into, or somewhere in that range. Someone with squintier eyes, an Asian person, something like that, might have as many as 7. Someone with, like her, who has very large eyes, almost cartoon-like eyes, they're very large and round. And in her case, it's far less than 5. It's actually more like 3.5. And so that's how I determine the right height of the eye. And the width of the eye was already determined with the earlier explanation. And now I just put these vertical lines in where I roughly see the pupils. And it almost looks like a snake sort of eye. It looks kind of creepy, but it serves the purpose of just letting me know where the pupils are going to be. And then, of course, I can always use my kneaded eraser to make those lines go away and better define that later. And so now I'm just adding the thickness of the eyelid and starting to just move into some minor details, but don't be tempted to go in there and do these tiny little itsy bitsy things, pupils and highlights and all that ridiculousness, because it's very tempting, and it's a temptation that you really need to learn to fight. Stay with the big stuff. Look at your drawing as though it were the blueprints for a home. If an architect were to take a piece of paper and start designing a home, they're not going to start with the inside of a toilet. They're going to start with the outside dimensions of that actual house. They're going to work their way inward and start putting in all the bedrooms and kitchen and everything else. Sorry, I got a bit of a cold. So don't be tempted to go into the little minor details too early in the game, because it's not going to work out. You end up wasting time with all these little fine details that took you an enormous amount of time, and now you're emotionally involved with it. You're too emotionally connected to it because you spent all this time on that beautiful right eye just to find out later that you did it way too big or too small, or it's too far to the left or to the right, or whatever the mistake is. And now you got all this time invested, and you figure, oh my God, I got to erase all this. So you don't. And you try to make it work. And trying to make it work usually leads to more inaccuracy and just a disastrous drawing. So think big. Think the big meaty stuff, the big width and the big height of the mouth. Then you worry about the shape of the lips, the width of the nose, the height of the nose. Then you worry about the shape of the nostrils and the ball of the nose. And then you worry about the little tiny nostril holes and all the little tiny details like the shadows and where they're placed. You always want to think big, bulky areas first. Get that proportionately correct. Then worry about the little stuff. Most of you fail because you go to the little stuff right from the get-go, and it just leads to a disaster. And unfortunately, a lot of people I've talked to, they have a really bad habit of doing that. They'll start with an eye, and they'll do what I call the explosion method. They'll start with one eye, and they just kind of explode out from there to finish up the portrait, right? Problem is, when you do that method and you don't really have good practice and good technique, you end up making an eye where you're just guessing at how big the eye is supposed to be. And so you're guessing that hopefully you're close and the head's going to fit on your paper. And then, of course, it's too far to the left or to the right or too big or whatever. And the next thing, your head is growing or shrinking. And you got all these proportional disasters going up because you're trying to explode from this one little area. Okay, that's just a really terrible way of working, in my opinion. Try to worry about the big stuff, just like you saw me do in the beginning, top and bottom. I put that first two lines as the very highest point, which is the top of her head, and then the lowest point, which is the bottom of her chin. Once I determine that on my drawing surface, I'm basically saying to myself, I have to make everything from the top of the head and the chin, okay, everything, the forehead, the eyeball, everything has to fit within those two lines. So I'm already preventing the growing problem that a lot of you tend to have by just doing that one simple uh, addition or technique, I should say, to my drawing. I'm right off the bat telling myself it's going to be this big and no bigger. And then everything else I start placing based on that original size. So I need to bring the eyes down, the nose up, whatever. But they're drawn very, very lightly. That way I can control the darkness of the line much better and make them disappear when I want to erase. Speaking of erasing, I always use a kneaded eraser. That's my go-to eraser. A hard white eraser, any not kneaded eraser is going to be usually too hard and damage the surface. What you want is a kneaded eraser. Okay, they usually look like little rectangles, kind of gray, and those are the best because you can knead them, make them into a point or flat edge or whatever, and they're very soft so it doesn't damage the paper. So I highly recommend that you only stick to a kneaded eraser. You notice how I hold my pencil. I don't hold it the way you would write out a check or the way you write a letter. Look how I hold it further back, and I'm pressing very, very lightly. In fact, it's very hard for me to press hard with the method that I'm holding that pencil, simply because it does not allow for a very high pressured sort of grip, like when you write a letter or make out a check. That's the sort of pressure that you won't be able to control it if you hold your pencil like that. Okay, I hold it further back, and that way I get a lighter line. And everybody complains, "Oh, it's so hard to do this, Robert. You know, I'm not used to hold my pencil that way." Well, tough. I wasn't born doing that. I figured that all on my own, and by watching masters and other great artists do their work. There's a reason for it. Okay, just like anything else, if you do it long enough, you practice long enough, you will get used to it. Okay, so don't let it be a thing. Just get used to it. In a very short time, you'll find yourself being more successful using that grip. And you can see me using it there. You see the back of my pencil. You probably can't tell, but it's actually floating in my palm. It's not pressing up against my palm. That way, there's barely any pressure. Barely any pressure. And being that it's charcoal, it's already a very dark media that I'm using. It's a very dark material. So I don't need to press hard to see the line. It's already a dark material. Very little pressure is going to give you a dark enough line. And so what you saw me just do a little second ago was I was measuring down to where the shirt ended or met there, close to her cleavage area, I guess. And I just measured that on my photograph from the chin down to where the shirt meets. And then I got the answer, which I believe was chin to eyeline or something. And then I found my chin to eyeline and slapped that in there on my drawing. And there you go. Now it's the same measurement. And so here I am going into some of the eye. You'll notice that I'm right-handed, and so I tend to work from the top left to the bottom right in general. And the reason I do this is because that way my hand is not dragging across a whole bunch of charcoal. So I brought the camera and started shaking around a little bit. Here I'm just showing you some shading. I usually like to put all my darks in first, but whenever I do these instructional things, I kind of break that rule just to try to give the student, all you viewers out there, a good sample of what it is that I do. But I'd rather that you work from dark to light in the traditional manner, where you would just put in all your shadows first and your mids and then work into your lights. But you don't have to do that. It's a good idea, especially if you're starting out and you're new at this. It's easier to see your middle and light tones if you put in your darks first. And always when doing your darks and lights, always make sure that you leave yourself room to grow. In other words, don't go as white as you think it is, and don't go as black as you think it is. Because if you go pure black and you find out later that you were wrong and it's just too dark, it's not impossible, but it's a much tougher fix. Whereas if I go lighter than I believe it is, then I can easily make it darker. It's very, very easy to make it darker. And when it comes to the white, I don't want to use a heavy dose of that white charcoal so bright that later on I find out, wow, that is really bright. And now I have no room to grow. I can't make it any brighter. It's as bright as I can get it. And so don't go so white, because now it's, again, you're doing band-aids, right? You're fixing things. I don't want you to fix. I want you to enjoy the process. I want you to have fun with this, not constantly be fixing mistakes. Okay, that's what slows people down. Speed is another thing. When you're drawing, go only as fast as you can think. Too many times people will move faster out of frustration, and that's a real bad habit. You got to give yourself time to know what the heck it is you're doing. Because if you don't do that, you're just going to make tons and tons of mistakes. And then you spend more time going back to fix everything because you went faster than you could think. All right, so go slow. Physically move slower. Think it through. Take a lot more breaks than I do. Okay, I'm doing this as a demo here, so I'm, not following my rule, only because I'm trying to get this done for this video. But at home, when I'm working on my own personal work, or you're at home working for yourself, you want to sit back 6 to 10 feet and take a good look at it with the picture next to it, so you can compare and say, wow, I'm messing this up big time. This is way too big or too dark or too small or too whatever. You want to be able to take your time to look at it from a distance, and then you go back in and make those changes. So here I'm just putting in the jawline and chin, and I'm just working from that darker side over to the left, which is a little lighter, and generally using a brush. Sometimes a brush, I find, is a little bit more gentle and softer and not as aggressive as a stump. A blending stump is sometimes a little bit more aggressive. So there, I backed up the picture so you can see more. You can see some of the pretty girl's face. And essentially, I'm just strengthening some of these lights and midtones, working my way across. I'm starting to get a good feel for what I'm doing. So a lot of this stuff that I tell you not to do, that you see me doing, a lot of that stuff you can start by just having a lot more practice. You can start gauging yourself right off the bat much faster and better. And so you can go into the lights a little earlier and into the darks a little earlier, and making very good guesstimates because you have that experience built up. But if you don't have the experience, then again, start with your darks, never going as dark as you think it should be, and work your way to the lights, never going as light as you think it should be. And then you can brighten the lights and the highlights and darken the darks later on towards the end of the drawing session, when you've pretty much gotten this drawing completely done. And you can say, oh, okay, I think this needs to be lighter or darker. So I hope you enjoyed this explanation, and I hope you understood what I was trying to get at. And subscribe. It helps me as an artist. It helps you guys. So when I post a new video, you get a little message or whatever on your phone saying, hey, Robert put another video on there. And I'm going to shut up now and let you guys enjoy the video. God bless.